Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. Well, what is up there, folks? Happy Wednesday, and thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode of the Brian Nichols Show. As always, I am your humble host, and today, it's been a while since he's been on the show because he's been busy being radical. The one man, the myth, the legend, Shane Hazel. Welcome back to the Brian Nichols Show, my friend.
What's happening, brother? I am tickled to be here. Do you know, I think you were the first podcast I ever got an invite to come do.
No kidding. Get out of here.
I was just thinking about that in your intro. I was like, man, look at this intro. It's badass these days. And like, yeah, it's incredible to see, like, just the evolution, the friendship, and all this, man. I'm humbled to death to be back with you.
And honestly, the feeling is likewise, Shane. You've been fighting the good fight, and I'm so honored. And I sometimes take a step back, and I'll be getting ready to wind down at the end of the night, and I'll just be kind of thinking through things, and I just smile. I'll be like, you know what? Got some really good buddies here that I've established in this, this greater liberty world. And you asked me 5-10 years ago, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? I never thought it would be in this world, but I am so thankful that I found myself not only with this group of people, but the fact that we're not only sharing these ideas that we've all kind of stumbled upon, but now we're making a difference. We're having the chance to reach new people who are asking questions. They're excited about it. I don't know. I've seen people like almost that kind of magic Christmas morning feeling when like you see the presents under the tree when they discover this new idea. And I think COVID, despite all the negatives that's come with it, has given a lot of people the opportunity to start looking for other options. And Shane, let's address the elephant in the room. I had you scheduled for the show in advance here for a couple weeks now, and all of a sudden you get brought up into the news cycle by one Congresswoman, Marjorie Greene, talking about your running for governor in Georgia in 2022. And she mentioned your running back in the U.S. Senate campaign where we had that special election that took place where, come on, man, you got over 100,000 votes and you split the vote and the Democrat ended up winning. Shane, you took those votes from the Republican Party. If only that silly Libertarian hadn't been there. So let's start off here. Number one, Shane, what's going on? You're running for governor. Are you looking to just go ahead and get those Democrats into office, or is it something else?
Yeah, I'm not into siphoning votes, man. It's really just all about what I preach on Radical. It's peace and liberty and consent and free market. So the idea that I'm a plant or I'm siphoning votes or any of that kind of stuff is just, it's so silly, man. And with thousands of hours of content out there, Marjorie Greene's, tweet thread. It was like Christmas morning, man. You wake up and you're like, I got one of the most hyperbolic, Congresswoman who can't say anything without being politicized, coming up with a 8-thread tweet mentioning, yours truly. It's like, well, let's have fun. And to be fair, I won't go too far, but to be fair, I think she was right in a lot of it.
Dig into that. So she's right into a lot of it because when I'm looking at it, she was right in that, this is my thought. She was right in that she said, hey, voters, they're out there. They're paying attention. And they're tired of the same platitudes. They're tired of the same empty promises. They're looking for people who are out there actually willing to stand up on issues that they care about and speak truth. And you got over 100,000 votes in that U.S. Senate campaign. You raised up a lot of concerns that weren't being met by the establishment GOP, and I think it was Purdue that you were facing off there, and that now right is that?
Yeah, Purdue and Ossoff, man, and the greatest part about the entire thing was, to garnish 115,000 votes, about 2.5% of the total vote count. I didn't spend a dime. I didn't knock on a door. I didn't attend, any real events, like that. It's not like when you're running for office in a statewide, like especially as a libertarian, when we're in a weird season of this country in terms of lockdowns and people are scared out of their minds to come in contact. Like it was just podcasting. It was doing lives on Facebook and Twitter and the rest of that kind of stuff. And so what's happening right now is the Republicans have already started to concede that they're going to lose Georgia for the governorship because they've got such crappy candidates that won't come to the table, that won't engage libertarians, that won't go after the independents. And, for Perdue, to have the chance to come on to my show for an hour after coaching him and telling him, hey, man, I got a laundry list for you. What do you think about, A through Z in terms of taking this and presenting it to, the people who voted for me to see if you can't win this election? Funny thing happens when you send Rand Paul into the lion's den, and the only thing Rand Paul can talk about on my show for David Perdue is Rand Paul and how David Perdue actually just kind of sucks, and Republicans, Democrats are kind of the same. It was really a tough moment. Even as a Rand fan, it was just kind of like this, whoa, this is terrible image, for the Republicans in the Senate and GOP in general. And that's when, Perdue saw the whole thing go down, the sacrificial lamb from Rand Paul being slaughtered on my show, and not maliciously, just with actual real questions from somebody that's not paid media. So it was one of those that people voted for David Perdue in the runoff election, then voted for him in the general election. And you're just sitting there like, well, did I inspire people not to vote for him? Because I don't know. And that's not my thing either. Like, I'm not telling you don't vote for him. I'm saying, and maybe vote on principle, and maybe that's resonating as well, which, for us, great, good. I'm not here to play in their system. I'm here to destroy their damn system, man. And that's the thing is like, oh, we can rebuild the constitutional republic. No, you can't. It's never going to happen. We're going to balkanize some way or another. We have to balkanize some way or another. And, the idea that we're going to be the same after we're done in terms of system, why would you want that? Why would you want this ridiculous, centralized planning murder cult type of system in charge of your lives through quote unquote a democratic system? Like, can't we just use a voluntary system? It's 21. God's sakes.
I wrote down the word expose. You exposed both the establishment GOP, but also it exposes and this is the other side, right? We kind of reframe the way we look at this sometimes. It's also exposing the left, because now you have people like Ossoff out there. Now you have the radicals out there like Stacey Abrams, who they are running hyper progressive to the left. And your average Democrat has been kowtowing to that hyper progressive base. And now when you're there as the true foil, where you have the squishy Republican, they're not able to differentiate enough. And when we're talking about that in sales, and this is something, by the way, folks, I'm super excited about. We're going to be doing more as we go into 2022, is taking the things we talk about from the sales and marketing perspectives and really bring in, guests like Shane here to show how to do this stuff in actual political applications. So in this case, Shane, you differentiated yourself. You were the liberty-based alternative, and not just an alternative, right? Your solutions were better than both solutions being presented to the voters from the Democrats and the Republicans. And right there, the 115,000 voters that you got, they are the part of the market that is paying attention. And I think there's more of those voters who are in that marketplace that we can start to appeal to, but they haven't been able to enter into the marketplace because they haven't seen a genuine product that they feel comfortable putting their vote behind. And now it's starting to show when you have these squishy Republicans and these hyper-progressive Democrats that if they're just going to be running us off a cliff and one just happens to have the pedal to the metal and the other one's going 25 miles an hour, I'm sorry, we are looking for a true alternative. I think it was Carla Howell I had in the show, and she mentioned this about resetting narratives. It shouldn't be, hey, we're going to cut the budget back. Instead of it's going to be 5% growth, it's going to be 3% growth, which that would just be imaginary numbers in our wonderful world if we could rewind back to that. But no, rather we should be saying, no, we're going to cut $2 trillion from the budget this year entirely across the board. Actually, you know what? We're going to go ahead and just repeal as many different agencies as we possibly can. Get rid of the DEA, get rid of the Department of the Fed, or the Fed, get rid of the FBI, get rid of the FDA. Just go down the list, and we would have some fun doing that and reestablishing narratives. You've done that, and that's why you are a threat. That's why you have a sitting congresswoman going out of her way to not only address the elephant in the room that there is a libertarian candidate in Georgia who has been causing a ruckus. But the reason being is that you're actually offering a real substantial alternative.
Couldn't have said it better myself, man. Maybe there's not even much left to say. I will say this though, as you're saying all this, and taking a lot of heat from, everybody that doesn't really understand voting and politics and those type of things in Georgia. There's a runoff system. You got to get 50% of the vote plus one vote to not go to a runoff system. And then obviously I'm not in it. So, if let's just say for the sake of argument, I did cost the Republicans the election. Man, you better, as Republicans, you should be extremely thankful. Look at what's going on in DC right now with the ridiculous amounts of spending, with the authoritarian overreach, with, what was Fort Pelosi up there with the National Guard guarding Congress. Like when you see all of this and you go, man, the Republicans aren't in control right now. They are not in control in the Senate. They're not in control in the House. They're not in control of the White House. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. If I'm to blame for that, you get, as Republicans, you get to blame all of this on Democrats. They're not going to do it, but yeah, I mean, in terms of differentiating yourself in this space, is I get into a lot of say liberty battles with guys that are like Mises GOP or Liberty GOP guys. And listen, I'm all for them. And what they're doing, they can't stand that I'm, doing what I'm doing. And that's okay. I think if you want to be in this liberty space and you're looking to the future and getting rid of the old systems in the past and the bureaucracy and the force and coercion and the centralized banks and things like that, you've got to be bold and you've got to be able to take the hate and you've got to sit there and say, listen, I'm not going to bend. This is not for sale. This is going to be principle all the way. I mean, for me, it's peace, liberty, and consent, right? Peace, liberty, and consent. If I am away from that, then I'm off principle. And if I'm off principle, then I lose the trust of my base. And I'll tell you what, man, to be where we are now in Georgia with, type of optics coming in already where they think they can't win because of people like me, then good, right? Good. We have done our job in pushing liberty into at least the back of their subconscious, right? They are scared to death and they're freaking out right now. And it's not because of Stacey Abrams. It's because their power, it will never return as long as somebody like myself or anywhere else for that matter is in the position that we are, that they have to come to the table. They're never going to be in power again.
Now, you ran, Shane, as a big L libertarian, right? Now, I firmly believe it's indicative on us and I've considered myself, I'd say for the past year or so, political party kind of agnostic. I definitely support our big L libertarian candidates, but at the same point in time, I believe that we also need to have our Thomas Masseys in the world who are going to go out there and fight the good fight. Yeah. Unfortunately, with the R next to their name, but at the same point in time, and this is where I wanted to maybe go ahead and steelman the best way I can. I want to hear your response is to say, well, look at what happened over the past 2 years, Shane. You look at maybe it's the difference between you running for office in the U.S. Senate, where it's a federal office, and now for governor, right? And let's look towards 2022. So you're running for governor as a libertarian. We just saw the state just literally to the south of you with one Governor Ron DeSantis, who he wasn't really a rock rib liberty Republican when he was a GOP rep in Congress. But then you fast forward to this era of COVID. He has been easily one of the best governors on the COVID issue across the United States from the onset. And part of me, and then, now removing myself from the steelman, I have to say I am empathetic to the position because I'm coming from up here in a blue state and I see family and friends living in hyper blue states, and just how important it is to have the ability to stand back against the duopoly, but in a meaningful way when one of those members is going to take over and really use the state in a negative way, which we've seen happen in states like New York, like New Jersey, especially like Michigan, like Pennsylvania. So let me ask you this, Shane. The steel man, doesn't it make sense, though, from a state level to at least have some safeguards in the GOP against what we've seen take place in this hyper progressive blue states where the COVID regime has taken such authoritarian power already?
I think, like I'm all like the Rands, the Massies, the Bigs, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say Mike Lee. Some of those guys have done, just what they're supposed to do, right? Like, they're like, it's not a high bar to be the best in Congress right now. So, with that being said, like, I'm all like, if you got GOPers out there that are doing these type of things, at state, local levels, good. This is like, make allies, find common ground. I mean, it's not hard. And here's the thing that I will say is, like, I think this is this is really what the libertarian moment needs to understand. The movement and the moment is that when we are successful as big L libertarians, we're not looking for power. We're not looking for a place in this structure with this bureaucracy. We're not looking for that. What we're looking at is a collapsing empire because of non-saleable money, because it's not hard. It's definitely immutable, and it's fiat. It's ridiculous, what it's become because of these things. Now, with what we're seeing in these hyper blue states, and in America, is a movement both on the Republican side and the Democrat side, and obviously on our side, towards balkanization and secession. And within those hyper blue states like California, you've already started to see that the people that are not in the cities are saying, we don't need these guys. We're going to do different things. Places like Oregon and Washington on the eastern side of the state, they're just like, man, we're done. Like, we are looking for possible ways out of this, not only through legislation, but through resolution, and saying that our county, our cities are not going to be part of this kind of thing anymore. And what that is taking a step back and saying, wow, because these guys have gotten so tyrannical in this time in such a short order because of a collapsing fiat currency, they have slipped. They've pushed too far, too fast. And there are people that are literally drawing lines in the sand and say, you better not cross this, man, because this is it. We got a gang full of people out here. We'll deputize them, and we will make sure that if you're out here to take our life, liberty, and property as a community, whatever that community is, you're going to be met with deadly force. And I think that is such a beautiful return to what we thought, and what we were always taught America was from the very beginning, is like, listen, you can stand up to the most gigantic, tyrannical empire that has ever existed with you and your local, friends and family and community, and fight off, tyranny, and do something new. Do something exciting, because let's face it, the framers didn't get it all right. They got it a lot more right than the guys that centralized it under the Constitution, but they didn't get it all right. They messed up in some big ways. And now what we're talking about is, no kidding, a volunteer type society with a new currency and an absolute opportunity to usher the human species into a new understanding, a new paradigm where we've never been before. I think it's an amazing time if you actually just kind of take a step back and look at it for what it is.
No, it absolutely is, Shane. And I think, part of what you've just helped outline is it shows we have a very touchy subject, right? You talk about the balkanization, like,
yeah,
this is a subject for your average person. They're like, it's like it makes me
no more America,
right?
Yeah.
And it makes people weary. But at the same point in time, what you've done is you've helped show what would happen in the next step. And we talk about this in the sales process as well, right? Where you have, it's funny how things timing my episode, or my morning sales huddle rather, that aired this morning in my inbox for the subscribers there over on our morning sales huddle email. It was about the issue where people have buyer remorse, and the idea of, if you're the sales guy, right, being able to help them see, hey, you made this big decision, right? Here's what's next. Here's what to expect next. And here's other people like you who also had these same concerns, and here's what they ended up doing, and here's where they ended up. And you've painted the picture to show, listen, it's not going to be this big scary thing, but rather it's actually going to give you the chance to live, more likely, a lifestyle that you want to live. You're not going to be forced to live under the 50 plus 1% of a a quote unquote democracy, as we've been taught in our government schools that is a good thing. No, but the contrary, we're starting to see that's not a good thing. We shouldn't have a situation where everybody is constantly looking at an election every 2-4 years and everybody gets super angry at each other because now one side's going to use the political football and you crush the other side. It's annoying. It's disgusting. And I think it was Dave Smith who put it best. He was talking about, do you really want it was, it was his breakdown of Hassan Piker's discussion about bringing communism to the workplace, right? And he said, do you really want to bring politics to the workplace? Because that's what it would be. You're bringing politics to the workplace. And in him saying that, it really shows people don't like politics, which is why I think we have to stop talking like politicians, like politicos, and instead, Shane, just start talking like people, because that's who we have to talk to, is your average person. The politicos are more likely than not already on one side or the other. And this is where the old GOP, the old GOP, the old LP, that I think is on its way out, has been playing the game so wrong. They've thought for the longest time that if you were to be friends with these politicos and you were able to have the opportunity to, pick their brains or, then give some influence. And while you're at it, you can also go ahead and maybe get some publications of yours put in their articles and such. They don't care. They really don't. You have been, in their eyes, just a useful idiot along the way to serve as the foil versus a true alternative. And this is where, when I first came into the Liberty movement, I was a little naive. I heard people say, I laugh, the LP. Yeah, I don't want to be a part of the LP. And I'd be like, why? Like, I think it's a great alternative. It's the biggest third party. It speaks about, libertarian ideas, the ideas of not hurting others and not taking their stuff. What's there not to like about that? And then I saw what the internal LP politics was and where their vision was, and not just the goals, but the intent behind those goals. And that's where I said, oh, come on, really? And then I get it. I saw, the man behind the curtain. I was like, oh man, the LP is full of just, people who really don't care too much about the big picture. And they are more focused on playing this, this clubhouse game, which I just am so tired of playing, Shane, which is why, thankfully, and I know we're going towards the tail end of the conversation here, but that's why it's appreciative to have you, but also refreshing to have you as somebody who is leading the charge. So as we, as I mentioned, you have an election coming up here. It's not even a year away now at this point, which is just wild to think about. 2022, you are running as the Libertarian in Georgia against now David Perdue. He said he's running for governor. Is that correct or no?
Yeah, David Perdue just got into the race here. I was
so that's fun.
I think they're trying to honestly throw it to Stacey Abrams at this point. It's like, let's create as much distrust and confusion and heartache for the GOP, and maybe they'll just stay home because they're so sick of this nonsense. And meanwhile, Stacey is unopposed.
Well, that's fun. So yeah, we have some interesting things to look forward to in Georgia in 2022. So with that being said, Shane, obviously we want people to be able to not only continue the conversation, but also go ahead and give you some love and support in all your endeavors here in Georgia. So we're going to go ahead and do that.
Radicalpod.com, brother. They can find anything and everything. There's the governor page. There's the Helios project. And I will be starting a new project on post-traumatic stress. It's called the Brave Mission. And I'm going to take a bunch of vets and do a whole bunch in terms of helping them recover through psychedelics. And I think it's going to be an absolutely amazing cultural shift up here in Appalachia, Stan. So, Brian, I want to thank you again, man. It's always good to hang out with you. Always good to talk with you. And I mean, just honored to be friends with you and have you in this space with us.
Absolutely. Shane, hey, at the end of the day, I tell us my sales team, you got to find your why, right? And as I sit back, what's my why? My why has always been, no, it's not. It hasn't always been. It has really been reaffirmed over the past, I'd say 2-3 years, especially over the past year and a half, as we've refocused here at the show, is to help the greater liberty world be able to bring these ideas and not only sell them to more people, but make it just the obvious, this makes sense next step. And I think we're having some success I'm feeling good knowing that the conversations have been changing. And it's been changing because we have people like you who have been leading the charge. So that being said, Shane, thank you for all you do, and thank you for the kind words. What we'll do is make sure we'll make it as easy as possible for folks to go ahead and find you, support your campaign, but also, yes, go ahead and subscribe to that amazing podcast, the Radical Podcast, which I cannot recommend enough, folks. I subscribe and I listen to every single episode. I cannot recommend enough. So with that being said, go ahead, click the artwork in your podcast catcher. It'll bring you to today's episode where you can go ahead, yes, get all of Shane's social media and links, but also the entire transcript of today's episode. Plus, yes, elephant in the room, episode 400 plus all other 399 episodes of the Brian Nichols Show. Oh, and by the way, all the other bonus episodes with that being said as well. Shane Hazel, thank you so much, my friend, for joining us on today's episode of the Brian Nichols Show.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.